Today, we are diving into bond matrix pricing. So we'll walk through a real CFA-style example. So stay tuned till the end for key takeaways. All right, let's jump right into it. So, what is bond matrix pricing? So, bond matrix pricing is a method to estimate the price of an illiquid or infrequently traded bond. So what we do is we compare the bonds to the similar bonds with known prices. It is commonly used when there is no recent market price available for the bond in question that we have. Okay, so when we are comparing or analyzing the bonds or the comparable bonds, we want to make sure. So when we analyze the comparable bonds, we want to make sure that our bond has similar characteristics to the bond in question or the comparable bonds. Okay, now the comparable bond needs to have a similar credit rating. So if our bond that we are trying to find the yield to maturity or the value, if our bond has a rating of AAA or BBB, we want to make sure the comparable bonds have the similar credit rating. Okay, it has to have a similar coupon rate. So if our bond has a fixed coupon rate, we want to find the comparable bond with the fixed coupon rate. Or if it's floating, then we want to make sure we are comparing it to the floating rate security. Okay, the bond needs to have same or similar time to maturity, the bond in question. So if our bond we are comparing has a 2 years to maturity, the comparable bond has to have 2 years of maturity. Okay. Or similarly, if we are comparing a bond in a financial sector, we want to make sure it has the similar industry or similar sectors. And then the last but not the least, the issuers. So if our bond is a corporate bond, we want to make sure the bond that we are comparing it to is also a corporate bond. If it's government bond, has to be compared to the government bond. Similarly, if it's municipal bond, then it has to be compared to the municipal bond. Okay, so by analyzing the yields and prices of these comparable bonds, we can then find the estimated price for the illiquid bond that we are trying to determine the value. Okay, all right. So on the right hand side, we have a table with bonds A to E. We have tenures, we have coupon rate, their current prices, and yield to maturity. So as you can see, the bond E that we are trying to find the value has a missing yield to maturity, which is we want to try to figure out. And then once we have the yield to maturity, we're gonna find the current price for the bond E. All right, so let's write some summary here. So bonds and their years. So bond A has 2 years to maturity. Similarly, bond B has 2 years to maturity. Bond C has 5, and bond D has 5 years to maturity. And then we are trying to find the value for bond E. Okay. Now, there are several steps involved when it comes to finding the value and the yield to maturity. There are steps to calculate the yield to maturity and then the price. Okay, so the first step will be we want to calculate average yield to maturity. Calculate average yield to maturity. Okay, so once we have the average yield to maturity, then we can use linear interpolation, and then we'll talk about linear interpolation here in a minute. And then once we have find the value or the yield to maturity using the linear interpolation, then we can move on to the step number 3, which is find the price for the bond, which is E in our case. Okay. All right. So let's move on to step number 1, which is calculating the average yield to maturity for 2 years and the 5 years. Average yield to maturity for 2 years and 5 years. So we have 2-year bond 3.786 plus 3.281, and over 2, just find the average, which is going to be 3.8035. So remember, we can only have one 2-year bond available, but in our case we have 2 available, which is pretty good, so we can have more accurate information there. And then we can find 5-year bonds average. Okay, which is going to be 4.181 plus 4.196 over 2, which will give us the value of 4.1885. All right, so having done the step number 1, the step number 2, so let's first copy over so we have the information available for our reference, and here's the table. So we have completed step 1, so step 2 will be using the linear interpolation method to find the unknowns, right? Now, what is linear interpolation? Well, it's a technique used to estimate an unknown value between 2 known values, right? So we have 2 known values here. So we have the value for A and B. For 2-year bonds, we have the value, which is the yield to maturity, right? So we have just calculated the average, right? So 2-year bonds, 3.8035. We have 5-year bond, 4.1885. So we use linear interpolation, a technique used to estimate an unknown variable, which is 3, which is between 2 known variables, which is 2-year and the 5-year. Okay. All right. Now we can also figure this out as like the yield for 3 years. So we have 3.8035 for 2-year bond. 5-year bonds have yield to maturity of 4.1885. So the 3-year bond has to have an approximate value of somewhere between 3.8 and 4.1. So we can make some guesstimate there, but let's go ahead and find out using the linear interpolation. So here is time to maturity, yield to maturity 3.8035, and then we have 5-year as 4.1885. Okay, now that's the average. So what about the 3-year yield to maturity? So let's say it's an X, right? So then we have 2y minus 3y over 3y minus 5y equals to 3.8035 minus x over x minus 4.1885. So that's going to give x 3.932%. So there we have it. So that's the yield to maturity that we were looking for. And as we said, it has to be between the 2-year and the 5-year. So it's 3.932 to be exact. Okay. Now, once we have yield to maturity, so for our bond E, we already have yield to maturity, and then we can go ahead and find the price, which is the step number 3. Step number 3, which is find the price for the bond E. Okay. All right. So we know that we have N equals to 6 because our bond has 3 years to maturity. It's a semi-annual bond. So N equals 6. Yield to maturity 3.932 over 2. We just calculated that, and that's going to be for semi-annual. Then a coupon 2. and then we're going to use the future value 100, and it's going to give us a present value of 100.19. All right, so as we can see, the yield to maturity for a 3-year bond was 3.92. So that's kind of a market rate, right? So market is offering 3.92% on an annual basis, and the coupon of our bond is 4%. Now, because the coupon is higher than the market yield, our bond is slightly traded above premium, or slightly traded above par. So it's traded just a little bit premium there. Okay, so that's about it. Share your thoughts and let me know if you have any questions in the comment section below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.